Hey, everybody. Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go.
On today's show, we have Owen Meets from the Holy Terror. We had John Nowicki in last week, but Owen, or O Willie, as you might know him from Facebook, was kind of the first to reach out to me, and he and I have been discussing all things music and otherwise since then. He was nice enough to come in after driving all over the state of Florida today, as he was just telling me. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
So the Holy Terror is a recent addition to my musical vocabulary.
Okay.
And it seems like it's kind of a cadre of interesting characters, kind of a band of misfit toys, as it were.
Yeah, it's a band of all close friends who have been in the music scene in Tampa together for some up to 20 years. So
I it's funny because I've always been a music fan, and I would have considered myself to be very knowledgeable about music. But what has become overwhelmingly apparent to me in the past year, aside from the fact that my mic setup sucks.
Oh, no, I just got to get it to my height, I'm sure.
is a local scene versus a national scene, and when you talk local scenes of music, it used to be, okay, you're talking about New York or maybe Chicago or LA or whatever. But in a way, I feel like Tampa's local music scene is its best kept secret. But then as I'm having more of these guests on, you, Elliot Mayo, Sean Kyle, Greg Thacker, Jeremy Gloff, all these people, is everybody knows about it. Somehow, so I'm the odd man out. I'm the dumbass who just didn't have any clear idea about it. But there's just such this amazing, deep lineup of amazing, diverse, really like legit talent here locally. And I'm just amazed it doesn't get more lip service than it does. Or maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places.
No, I mean, the scene was pretty
I know New World Brewery seemed to be kind of one of the hubs of it, and then when that went under the first time, it kind of
that was personally I played probably 50 or 100 shows on that stage in 4 or 5 different bands over the last 20 years.
Right.
So it was emotional, it's
end of an era.
Yeah, and you cut your teeth there. You play your first show with your band there, and then you play a show 20 shows later, and you rock the place. So it's they had national accent. I mean, My Morning Jacket played there at one point. Tampa's always been a great music scene, but it is kind of cliquey and insular. There's kind of a Ybor Tampa scene, and then the St. Pete scene. And then there's like
Orlando,
but even out in like Newport Richey, there's a metal scene, and stuff like that. And
wasn't that where like Cannibal Corpse? Aren't they all out that way?
I think so.
Lutz and Pasco and all that stuff. Yeah, no, well, it's true, and so my kind of my resting point, like I have a broad taste, I would say, but my kind of home base is always more heavy music.
Same for me.
Metal, punk, hardcore, all that. Like I can just, I'm most comfortable in that pocket. Like I can kind of talk at the greatest depth about that. Once I start getting into like twangy dread, as John referred to it, I can drop just a few names to be dangerous, but I'm out kicking my coverage talking about, that type of stuff. And then, but so for instance, in the past couple of weeks, I had Jeremy Gloff on. I had you and John on. And then earlier this week, I had Mike's girlfriend Vetno on. Just completely couldn't be more different from each other.
Right.
Jeremy's kind of this poppy folk singer. You guys are twangy dread.
Or whatever.
Well, I mean, to even say that is it's almost verse by verse, if not song by song, you know?
Yeah.
And then Vetno was just really not a type of music that I seek out or listen to, but I've been listening to it all week. Is kind of.
I haven't heard the new stuff with her.
She's got
solo.
a new single coming out tomorrow.
She's solo now, right?
Now completely solo.
Right.
But
Yeah, we played with them a few times as the Holy Terror with the band.
She's had nothing but amazing things to say about you guys. She loves you guys. So.
Nice.
But it's amazing. I was just fantasizing about that card. And I was like, what a cool card that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, that's not two bands I would put together on a card,
Right.
but it probably was amazing.
I think they played our CD release show for the first Holy Terror album at Independent.
Okay.
I think they opened for us there, and I think one other time. Think of the Blue Note. We
Okay.
played a show together.
Okay. Well, yeah. So in any event, it's like the sheets have been pulled back, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this whole other world to music that after, 45 years of being a pretty avid fan of it was not even, now Elliot Mayo has got me excited at every new release about local, like, I was more excited about Horsewhip coming out last week than I was about Deftones coming out last
Nice.
week. And, so there's all this other stuff. And, I found Meat Wound and Witchbender and, so there's a lot of that. But I'm also really digging stuff that's kind of out of the center lane. And definitely that's where the Holy Terror, like, I was telling John when he was on here, one of the things I always do when I'm listening to people I haven't heard before is I have to find a place to put them.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you sound like? Or what type of music is this? Or
It's natural.
Who's the singer? Or what's this? Blah, blah, blah. And when I can't do it right away, I'm even more intrigued because I have, as I've gotten more and more into it, you like a challenge. When you're a kid, it's pop music. You like Michael Jackson, and don't get me wrong. Well, I mean, I'm not speaking on him as a person, but his music was, it's scientific or mathematically Frankenstein to be as appealing as it can be.
Yeah,
right.
Quincy Jones knows what he.
Well, for sure, yeah. Or
doing,
who's the Wall of Sound guy? Like the Pet Sounds of the Beach Boys. The guy with the hair shot his girlfriend.
Spector.
Yeah, Phil Spector.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a book that I have and I've never fully read, but it's David Byrne, How Music is Made, and my suspicion, if I ever got around to reading it, is it's talking about almost what music does to your brain or what music does to, the rhythms, the harmonies, the notes, the arrangements, the beats, all these things can trigger these types of responses, happy, sad, whatever the case may be. So, there is kind of a language underneath the music, a language underneath the vocals that you're kind of playing with people, but where was I going with this? Was there somewhere I was going? Oh, challenging music. So as I got more and more into it, it started to be, like one of my favorite bands is Dillinger Escape Plan. And
I love them.
When I started listening to them around, Calculating Affinity and those at Miss Machine or whatever the green cover was, I'm drawing a blank on it now.
I don't remember that one. I had, I still own Calculating Infinity on vinyl.
Ironworks is my personal favorite. I can't tell you why, but it just is. But you listen to someone who's not used to that type of music, and I think Elliot said it about Converge, is the first time you hear it, you're like, what the fuck is this? Mm-hmm. It sounds like, it's like when people look at paintings and like, I could do that.
Right.
I could throw a splash of paint and have it do whatever. And it's like, well, that's all you're seeing. But what you're not seeing is this, and what you're not seeing is that. And so this is my essay on why the Holy Terror is like Dillinger Escape Plan.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, we'll take it because, and I just want to make something really clear right now.
Sure.
I'm not the current bass player for the Holy Terror. I don't know if we should mention that up top. Joe Grady's.
You've been in at various points. Yeah.
Joe Grady's currently playing the bass for them. But what we were doing, it was just kind of John's thing.
Sure.
He wanted to step out front of the drum set and be a lead man for the first time in his life.
And play a guitar in the most fucked up way you could ever play a guitar.
Oh yeah, lobster claws, man.
Yeah, I was watching him and I had cramps in my hands.
It's been incredible. Just like he finally got a left-handed guitar that he can string right-handed and play upside down, so it doesn't have the cord poking into his thigh or something. Yeah, it's insanity.
He just needs a signature model. But we're not talking about John. We're talking about you.
No.
We're talking about Owen. All right. So, are you a Tampa guy?
Born in Kansas, moved back.
Really?
Moved back by the time I was 1.
Where about in Kansas?
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
It's 2 hours south of Kansas City, and about 30 minutes west of Joplin, Missouri.
Until
It's
I
right
was
on the border.
Until I was about 40 years old, the only 2 speeding tickets I ever had were 2 trips to Kansas or Missouri. Because you drive for 5 hours in the middle of nowhere without a soul or anything that's a point of reference, and all of a sudden you look down, you're going 110 miles per hour. So I always used to joke about, be careful. Everybody says be careful in Georgia, but be careful in Kansas. So
yeah, Texas too, I hear, is not a state to drive fast in.
So you just did a year in Kansas and then came back at 1?
Yeah, born there, came back around 1. My parents split.
Okay.
My
siblings?
Biologically 3, through marriage 8.
Oh, wow.
So
that's like a sitcom.
Yeah, and I'm the youngest.
Okay.
By 9 years. My next sibling up is 9
So you're
years.
kind of one of those weird kind of like hybrid only children. It's
Right.
like no one else was in the house, but you have a bunch of siblings.
Right. And also my parents were 35 and 36 when they had me.
My dad was 38. Yeah.
So I had older parents than most of my friends as well. So
did that impact you at all? That plays a big role in my reflection on my life. Do you think that?
I don't remember any specific instances when it did, but it had to have affected like psychologically somehow. I mean, everything does.
Well, so when you were old enough to kind of start, having fights with your friends, start noticing girls or start whatever it is, most of your siblings are out of the house by that point.
Yeah, for sure. My sister went to college when I was 9.
So you don't have any age appropriate, not that your parents are not age appropriate, but you don't have any other kids in the household to bounce that off of, to experience that with. So what I've, talked about ad nauseum, and people, I always joke about the 5 people listening to the show. The 5 people listening to the show is probably like, get on with it. But you become a mirror for your parents.
Yeah.
And so you have at 9, they're 45.
Yeah.
So you have 2 45-year-olds and a 9-year-old, which,
right.
I mean, that's just.
Well, I had one 45-year-old.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. But I mean, that's the only situation where that is an okay setup, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Because what common ground do they have? What common vocabulary do they have? Their perception of the world, their experience of the world is vastly different. They're not entertained in the same way. Their tastes in food aren't the same. Their tastes in art aren't the same. Their priorities aren't the same, yet they're locked together and forced to kind of grit it out with each other.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, I think you leave your print on each other. And so one of the things that, I feel happened is it made me very attuned to people because I've spoken a lot about both my parents were alcoholics, and as a young kid, watching them kind of deal with that before I really knew what that was. Like, they weren't violent, they were good people, but, they went to bed kind of early and, it wasn't uncommon for dad to pee in the closet or whatever the case may be. And so that just kind of becomes part of your world. I remember I was 9th grade or something in high school, and the teacher pulled me aside and she asked me if I was smoking. And I was like, no. And she's like, you smell like a chimney. And I was like, well, my dad smokes. And it never even occurred to me that I smelled like smoke. And then when it was pointed out to me, I was like, oh, wow. Like, there's all these things that your parents do to you that they don't even mean to. Right. So anyway.
It's secondhand psychology.
Really, again, it's that kind of vocabulary below the vocabulary. Yeah. There's like what life you're perceiving that's happening, and then what life that's kind of happening on a lower frequency that's happening. So music, was that part of your life at an early age?
Early age. My brother. Well, before I had bands.
Not that you were into. Who'd you listen to?
Oh, well, no. I mean, before I even knew what bands was, my brother and sister were in musical theater and choir.
Oh, okay.
We were, all 3 of us ended up singing as paid singers in the St. John's Episcopal Boys and, choir, boys and women choir. We traveled to Europe and sang in England.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I think I was in 4th grade at that time.
Do you still have that in you? Do you still have the pipes? Can you?
I can be as loud as I used to be, but no, I was a very high soprano then. Okay. And then, 30 plus years of
biology and physics and
cigarettes. Yeah. And screaming in metal bands.
Right.
Screaming along to metal bands.
Well, but I mean, it probably gave you a better understanding of tone and music theory than a lot of people have at that age.
Yeah. And also my brother was and my sister, but my brother was the classic prodigy, playing violin at age 4, composing full choral parts for a 40-piece choir in his early, his adolescence. And
So what's your name as it appears on your driver's license?
Owen Meats.
What is Meats?
Meats is probably we were butchers in the old country, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, England or Wales. That
Okay.
border between England and Wales, wherever it moves over the last couple hundred years, that's
Right.
probably about where I'm from.
Have you ever done the whole DNA deal?
No, but my grandfather on my dad's side and my father then continued a family history.
So you can go pretty far back.
You can go pretty far back. As far as my mother's side, we go pretty far back to South Carolina.
Appalachian.
Before it was South Carolina,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
We lived on that land.
Yeah.
No, more lowland.
More lowland, okay.
Yeah. They call it Gullah country.
Yeah. My uncle lives up there and they always have their low country broil and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
it's almost like a Cajun type of situation there.
So, yeah, I've always said I have dual citizenship in the South and the Midwest because, when school would get out, I'd go for the summer and visit my dad, or I'd go like every other Christmas or spring break. And I had friends up there. And then when I was 13, going from 8th grade to 9th grade, my mother and stepfather decided to retire and they wanted to travel. I was the only kid left in the house. I moved to my dad's for high school to Kansas.
Oh, wow.
So that was a little bit of a different.
How'd you find that? Was it good for you? Was it bad for you? Did you feel the odd man out? Or?
It ended up being good for me. For a while, it was touch and go.
Were you an athlete? Were you an artist? Were you a academic?
I played soccer down here, and then I tried to play football up there and just didn't like it.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a lot of getting yelled at for no reason.
I'm kind of more of a solo sports type person. Like I'm not good with like teams.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have one really specific clique. In high school, I kind of hung out at least a little bit with most people that wanted to hang out with me.
Right.
But I was a little skater kid.
Did you skate?
Yeah, I had, the size 40 jeans cut off about mid calf.
Yeah.
With, bright red socks pulled up to my knees. My Converse 1 stars that were colored in purple.
Remember any decks that you had?
No. By that point in time, I was on to music and had kind of quit comic books and skating and anything else I had any interest in. Yeah, I was still rocking the style. What became kind of known as like the new metal. I'll go ahead and claim it. I didn't go as far as like the Jeanco jeans or anything like that.
Yeah.
But,
it's a weird thing. Do you know, I keep dropping his name. Elliot Mayo?
No, not
okay. Well, so
personally.
he sings in Wreath and Vacancy locally.
No Vacancy. I'd never heard Wreath before.
But he's like an encyclopedia of hard music. Like he knows all of it. And so he was talking about his albums of the year, and he like 10 of them he came up with. One of them was Code Orange, which I've tried to listen to, and it just keeps hitting me as like a little too Limp Bizkit or something.
Yeah,
but
I couldn't name any other songs. But
well, that said, I am an avid fan of Deftones. And,
myself as well.
I've kind of created this us and them mentality, and all the people that have been on the show. It's like literally becoming a dividing line.
If Deftones is new metal or not?
No, if Deftones is good or not. Like my buddy Greg, he's like, how many strings does a guitar have? How many strings does the bass have? And is there a DJ? Because if you could say more than 6, more than 4, and yes, I'm not fucking listening to it. And like Rob Sexton over at Planet Retro, he's like, I'm not doing it. But then, it's been generally getting pretty good reviews. The album that just came out last week, I really dig it.
I think it's as strong as their last 3 releases.
Yeah.
If you put their last 4 since Sergio got in the band, basically, I think they've been progressing every album, changing every album. What's interesting about this one is that they work with Terry Date again, which they hadn't done since the self-titled record.
Right.
So it's like 17 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And then I've heard a couple of stories of like Terry Date almost quit every time they worked together. Like he was like 1 second from walking out on them.
Well, I always hear
numerous times.
Was it Chino and Stephen Carpenter?
Yeah,
Like
Stephen.
or Stephen. Like it seems to an outsider like they may not get along great.
I think they're doing better now.
They're the Ben Wyman and Greg Pucat. They're just kind of always an uneasy truce over whose direction they're going with.
Well, I always heard that Stefan was like more into creating heavier music.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the drop D tune, 8-string, almost like with gent music or whatever they call like Meshuggah or whatever it is. But then, Chino's always trying to be like Robert Smith or get a Morrissey kind of, which I dig. I love. As much of a dick as he's become in his old age, I love Morrissey. And
have
I love
you heard the Deftones Morrissey cover?
I have, yeah. Is it Please? It's not Please.
Please,
yeah.
Please,
which it was a Ferris Bueller fan. It's like the best part of that movie. My wife and I and our kids went up to Chicago and we bought Red Wings jerseys so we could kind of emulate the pictures from Ferris Bueller when that song is playing. Yeah, but. So in any event, I want to kind of get into your entry point into music. Right. So we talked about your traveling, singing in choir, all that. When did you get into more commercial music?
I think I got my first guitar at around 11.
What was it?
Fender Strat, red.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It might have been it was a real Fender Strat.
Yeah.
The one after I broke that one was the Squire Strat.
Okay.
Because I wasn't allowed to have nice things anymore.
Yeah, that's why we can't have nice things.
But I always had a piano in my house. I always had my brother's instruments.
Yeah.
My brother's friends literally were having band practice in my house. They were listening to King Crimson, Pink Floyd.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The first band I can remember ever, like, I need to buy the cassette was Living Color Vivid.
Oh my God, for sure.
And I just remember when, I don't know what year that came out. Did you see them play with
Stones, Steel Wheels?
No.
It had to be around 87.
I would have been 7.
Does that sound right?
I don't know.
How old were you when you got the album? Do you remember?
It was around that time. Okay. Yeah.
Because they opened at the Old Sombrero for the Stones and the Steel Wheels tour, and I remember seeing that. That was my first concert ever.
Nice.
Anyway, so yeah.
So I remember jumping around the living room in my tidy whities with a tennis racket, just shredding to Cult of Personality. And
I'm always surprised that they didn't have a bigger career than they had. I mean, they've always been kind of around, but it was like kind of a one and done on that album. But I mean,
well, Say It Loud, I think was their next album, and they've always gotten critical reviews, but I think they kind of just fell off the map.
Vernon Reid, the guitarist, I mean, he's a pretty legit guitar.
Boy,
yeah,
he's
really good.
Bad boy. Yeah.
So who else? Who else were some of your bands? I see the Pink Floyd tattoo on the
form, so.
I
mean, Dark Side and The Wall are
parts
of my heart. 39. I'll be 40 in 2 months.
Okay. Yeah, men of a certain age, they had no choice but to have some version of Bob Marley, The Doors, Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead.
I had all that but the Dead.
Yeah. Well, the Dead is kind of a another us and them type of
I like
situation.
Their studio records. I like Terrapin Station.
Their pop songs are on point. Yeah, when they're trying to actually have a song structure.
If it can be under 6 minutes long, which is crazy because I listen to Tool and there isn't anything on the new record under 8 minutes long. So except for the intros and stuff.
I'll tell you this, when I'm playing with my kids, the only thing that they don't bitch at me to change the channel is if I put it on like Dead and Co or something. That somehow just is the soundtrack to being a toddler.
I can see that.
Just playing with Barbies and all this other shit. And so, I mean, it plays on some level. So
then I had pretty much a family that had grown up together. We're still best friends now. And their father was a musician.
Oh, really?
So they grew up with piano and
so
a drum kit
family
in the garage. And so I was at their house all the time. So one day somebody handed me a bass, said, "You're the bass player now." And we learned, some Allman Brother tunes, and his dad would come out and play with us and stuff. And so that was kind of like the first band situation. That would have been like 92, 93. We were called Turkey Leg Jones.
Turkey Leg Jones.
And we recorded a one microphone into a cassette tape that actually just got somebody just found again.
Oh, really?
And digitized and sent it to me to see if I can clean it up.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of like the first time I ever recorded anything.
Right.
And then a couple years later, I moved to Kansas.
So then you have to like rebuild from the ground up.
Right. So at that time, I kind of switched back over to guitar. I kept on playing both throughout, but
You've got the hands and the arms for the bass player. I mean, it's funny because you look at like Geddy Lee or Cliff Burton or some of these other amazing bass players, and they're these little spindly things. But I always like guys that look like they could just pull the strings off a bass if they had to.
Yeah.
You definitely got that. You know,
well,
that
I might got a pump on today because I was holding a nail gun above my head quite a bit. So
you're swole up.
I might be swole up.
Yeah.
But no, so in the bands, you know, at the time I did the Metallica thing, kind of lost them after the Black Album, kind of like most everybody else did.
For sure.
Anthrax was huge. Sepultura has always been huge. Sick of It All, Life of Agony. I was into some hardcore stuff.
New York hardcore stuff. When
Biohazard.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And then at the same time, I owned every Bob Marley record, you know, and Allman Brothers. Allman Brothers probably, if you had to like take it down to one of the most influential bands just in my personality and in my life, Allman Brothers would be in that conversation.
Well, that's a strong band to have there. I mean, again, very savvy with their instruments, able to kind of play a wide breadth of music, you know, just strong. You know, there's not a weak person in that band. So, yeah, I could see the early groundwork for kind of what was to come with your career from that.
And so from there, it was, you know, I think 90.
Did you do any college or?
Not until I was 30. Yeah.
Okay.
I moved to Kansas for high school and pretty much hooked up with this guitar player named Jeremy. We were in the same homeroom. He was just moved in from Springfield, Missouri. He was a skater kid. We both played guitar. Instant, like, that's like best friends, you know. It's like, are we best friends already? Yeah. It's like,
we are. Yeah.
And we started playing guitar together, and then through a series of a couple years of different players quitting for a while, doing this, doing that, around into junior year, we kind of put together what would become the band till about 2 years after high school.
Okay.
And that was called Ill Fated.
Ill Fated, was it hardcore heavy type band or?
We like to call ourselves groove metal.
Okay.
We had a keyboardist, which was, you know, a little different at the time. This was 97, 98, 99, 2000.
We heard Genghis Tron or
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, we weren't nearly as heavy as them. We were basically new metal.
Just to say,
new metal.
You can put keyboard in that music. There's a way to do it. Yeah, for sure.
So we were basically new metal with a really talented drummer who was 20 years older than us.
Which, by the way, is the fucking that's where it's at.
That was the key.
That's where you spend your money is on your drummer.
That was the key to really making our band feasible at all.
Right.
Was, you know, finding Tony when we did, and he was so much more experienced and you know, just better at the drums than any other.
It's like the difference of looking for a place with a map and without a map. Mm-hmm. You know, you can have the drummer. It's like, okay, we got to turn here. You know, we got to you know play. You know, without it, you're just all over the place. So
we did some records.
Does that stuff exist somewhere?
Yeah, I have a copy of that record on digital only.
Okay.
But I can email you a link to it.
I'm eating up everybody who's on here. I've been trying to get Greg Michael J from Wolfface. He had a band in the early 2000s called Next Season, which I didn't know about till like 2 weeks ago. He's like, you should listen to this. And I went back and I was like, I like this as much as you got. And it's like,
yeah.
And I'm begging him. I was like, put it on Spotify, put it on Spotify, put it on Spotify. And that's kind of a, you know, I don't really understand the politics of Bandcamp versus Spotify. I mean, I guess you get paid for your album on Bandcamp, but if you want exposure, you're probably going to get more exposure on Spotify.
I think it's more transactional on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Like they get downloads.
Yeah. Whereas
Spotify, it's a subscription-based service.
Right.
I think that's really the only difference.
I feel so guilty that I'm such a mark for Spotify as I am, but it's just so easy. It's like
I just got it, man.
Yeah.
And I love it.
So 2 years, that band went 2 years past high school in Kansas.
Yeah. So about 20 years old, I moved back to Florida.
Straight to Tampa?
Yeah, straight to Tampa.
And then what were you doing for work? Were you?
I actually got a job working the old Yeoman's Road.
Okay.
Running that kitchen at night.
The one on Davis Island?
Yeah.
Okay.
In 2001.
So you know March. Everybody because of the open mics and everything else.
Well, my brother was hosting the open mic. My brother John with his friend Vince, they had been doing Wednesday open mic there for a long time. And that's kind of how I got the job, is like they were looking for a cook. And that's what I was doing in high school, is working as a cook various places with a couple, offshoot odd jobs here and there, but mostly restaurant stuff.
Right.
And then, so I got the job at Yeoman's and started hanging around. And then they made Burger Night, open mic night, kind of coincided. I'm pretty good at making burgers. And it was just clicked. And, that's where Nowicki showed up. That's where all the guys from Toast, a couple of the guys from Holy Terror, Tribal Style.
Was Poetry and Lotion a thing yet, or is that
No. Poetry didn't come until after Toast.
Okay.
So that would have been like 2006, maybe.
Were you in that?
In Poetry and Lotion?
Yeah.
Depends on who you ask. No,
Yeah,
I'm the unofficial member.
You're the fifth Beatle for.
Yeah, no, I just recorded their records
Okay.
and kind of co-produced them with them.
Gotcha.
I probably I play the Frog Guiro on one song, and I play keyboards on another. On
Frog Guiro?
A guiro is like a.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I played that on the last record, and I think on the first record they did with me, I did like a couple keyboard parts.
Okay.
But uncredited totally.
Sure.
I think they credited me actually to be funny on the second one. But that was a few years later even. So at Yeoman's it was just free for all, but there was a ton of good players. And at the same time as all that was going on, those same brothers that I'd grown up with in Tampa, I moved in with them.
Okay.
And they had a recording studio set up in their house.
Oh, wow.
And so we got together and called ourselves Superfly TNT Presents, which they had been going by since they were at Plant.
Okay.
And just kind of built off that and started recording people, inviting people over.
What type of music was that?
We were pretty much white boy funk,
Yeah.
not like galactic white boy funk. We were trying to be funky,
Sure.
but it was not jammy at all. We were trying to be on the cuts and on the ones,
Yeah.
we were trying to keep it tight, but also have some fun with it. And
Right.
then also hip hop's a huge influence. We were trying to bring in some digital aspects at the time. We were covering Herbie Hancock, and then other
Party
times.
music.
Yeah, I mean, it was just
What's
a
the
good
type of
time.
music up in DC that they always talk about kind of in conjunction?
Shoegaze?
No, is it called? Not swing. It's a very bass and drum driven
Mm-hmm.
kind of funk music. And every documentary you see on DC, it talks about how weird it was that hardcore and this,
Mhm.
which was ultimately kind of African American type music.
Was like two-step or?
Gonna fucking kill me. This
Yeah.
always happens. I forget
Well.
shit, and as soon as I turn the computer off, it all rushes back into my
Yeah,
brain.
it's
But it's like what was the type of like I was asking my brother-in-law who's from Puerto Rico. I was like, can you tell me what reggaeton is? And he's like, it's basically the drum beat. Like the
Right.
drum beat is what reggaeton is. You know,
Right.
every song you hear is like doom, 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 doom. You know,
Mhm.
that's what reggaeton is. So, with the funk, it's very, there's that thing
Right.
that you can kind of just pick up and everybody just can kind of hear and play a part of.
And we were experimenting musically as well, just, on one of the songs.
This was the 90s?
No, this is the early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I was doing the dishes and Chris was trying to record something and it sounded cool. So we just left it at the beginning of the song.
Oh, well, that's
And we were playing with cellos and we were playing with just any instruments we could get our hands on, any microphones we could get our hands on, inviting people back from the bar at 3:00 in the morning because we like their open mic set and let's record it now.
that's awesome. It's mixed media. It's It's a
Yeah.
pastiche of just everything.
Yeah. And it was a very, we were poor as dirt, three, young kids. Chris was like 22. I was 20. Jesse was 20. So, we were just trying everything we could to stay alive and play as much music as possible.
But as poor as you were, not to get too kind of, flaky about it, you probably were more rich than most of the wealthy kids because of your abilities and the family that you formed and
Right.
what you could do and enjoy. I mean, that's enriches your life so much more than any car you can buy. Or although granted, it's nice to be able to pay your mortgage and have air conditioning. But all right, so take me forward.
All right, so forward after that, Superfly kind of broke up.
You have long ass band names, man.
And then, well, that's not even the whole story because it used to be Superfly TNT Presents, and then we'd change our name every show.
After like the colon.
So it'd be like Superfly TNT Presents Neckbone, Superfly TNT Presents The Baby Blues.
I love that.
And then we kind of settled on Neckbone towards the end, once we kind of solidified everything.
Yeah.
But
the Neckbone set was the most popular. So it's like we're gonna trade on this name for a while. Yeah.
So then a friend of mine had bought a house in Seminole Heights.
Okay.
And this was while Toast was going on.
Okay.
And I kind of bullied my way into Toast just by showing every
bullied my way into Toast is going to be the title of this. Go ahead.
Nice. And kind of just took a djembe and sat down on stage with them, and they were all my friends. They just let me do it. So I kind of became the unofficial fifth member of Toast, and I'd go to every show. I didn't have anything else to do and drink and
where was their spot? Like, where could you find them play most?
We played, well, they had a residency at Yeoman's like every other Sunday, and then they played the last or first Thursday of the month at the Dubliner. They played Ferg's one night before a Dave Matthews concert.
The Tampa one or the St. Pete one?
The Tampa one.
Okay.
I mean, they put together some pretty crazy gigs. We played the Marshall Center at USF to like 15 disinterested college students who were there for the free, sandwiches or whatever. We kind of played all over the little Tampa Bay area a little bit, and then right towards the end of recording our first real studio record, my buddy bought a house out in Seminole Heights, Dylan, and he was like, let's build a recording studio because it had these two outbuildings, cinder block
Seminole
buildings.
Heights, you can find a little grandmother suite or a little thing you can kind of dual purpose. Was Seminole Heights the cultural hotbed that it is today back then? It was a no man's land.
No, you had McDonald's, you had ABC Pizza. Yeah, 7-Eleven, but no, Florida looks a lot different.
Do you ever go on the Seminole Heights Facebook pages?
Yeah, I'm on a
few. Like every night it's who stole my bike or what's that helicopter doing? Even still.
Yep. And so we started building a studio, and that would become Short Circuit Studio.
Okay.
Which is kind of how I made my bones finally in the Tampa music scene.
Is that still in existence?
I haven't decided if I'm bringing the name back
because
we'll get to it. But eventually it became Short Circuit South when I moved to Sarasota.
Okay.
And now I've moved back to Tampa, and I'm not sure. Well, first of all, I don't have a space.
Right.
So I hesitate to.
Well, that's kind of important, but.
Right. And so we'll see.
Yeah.
Short Circuit could be back. I mean, I still got all the artwork and everything.
Well, there you go.
And it's, easier not to get a new logo than it isn't. So.
Yeah. So after Toast,
I kind of stopped playing and went full on recording for about a decade.
Really?
Yeah. I'd play here and there and strum, and stuff and play on other people's records. And
what type of producer were you? Were you an engineer or a producer?
Well, I'm both.
Well, so the reason I posit it that way is I was having a conversation with someone just before you were on the show that Laura Jane Grace from Against Me evidently just released an acoustic record today recorded by Steve Albini.
Oh.
And we were discussing why in the world would you have Steve Albini do an acoustic record for you? And, we were talking about there's the Steve Albinis and there's the Rick Rubins and then everything in between. And so that's where that question came from.
Yeah. So really early on, I had worked some corporate stuff for a few years as kind of a, working restaurant and working during the daytime at this more corporate studio. And, it was so soul sucking to sit there and be like, man, you almost got that vocal take, but time's up, man. Yeah. And if you want to try again, you're going to owe me another $85 because we don't do partial hours,
Right.
Eventually, that was kind of when digital recording was coming in. So by the time I left that place, we were charging $55 an hour.
So the blow was a little bit softer, but not much. Yeah. $30 softer.
And we started prorating. We started having to do things because people could just go record in their,
it's part of the business,
Well, it was also what I was doing.
Yeah.
Behind my boss's back.
Right.
Because I had a non-compete.
Yeah.
Eventually he learned about it and was cool with it because I wasn't competing with him directly
really competition,
at all.
Yeah.
Well, we never advertised. We don't. So based off what I learned from and what I experienced at the corporate studio, once we got the studio set up, I just made it our mission statement, music over money.
Yeah.
And we had no clocks. And we started charging flat rates to most bands.
It's amazing the freedom that you can have when you remove money from a scenario.
Yeah.
There's much less of a importance on measuring things when money's not involved.
Exactly. And
getting it right is more
right.
The target. And
that's what it was about. Cause I saw these kids, would come in and, they're so nervous. It's their first time in a recording studio.
Yeah.
And they're even double nervous because their dad's paying $85 an hour behind it. And he doesn't understand why his son wants to make music.
Yeah.
Instead of play football,
For sure. Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. Or the dad's one of the, do it right. I mean, I've had both.
Well, not to mention my extremely limited studio experience tells me that it's not sexy at all. For a 5-hour studio session that I sat in, 4.5 hours was setting the drums up, and then the other 30 minutes was every other part of it. And so it's literally like fixing your cable box or something for most of it.
Right. So we had some liberties that other places don't have. Mainly is we only really took 1 or 2 jobs on at a time.
Did you have like an old school board, or were you using?
We were
Pro Tools or?
Analog into Sonar.
Okay.
But we just had a Mackie board.
Okay.
At the beginning we bought what we could afford that would do the best job. And now I'm pretty much 100% inside the box. I just have a road case of preamps that all connect direct to my computer, and I don't even have to worry about stuff like that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if my understanding of it is how easy it is. I mean, talking to Jeremy, he's like, yeah, I recorded that in my closet, so it's definitely, but it's funny because so in the last couple, before Mike, who was here earlier, before we started working on the sound, I had another producer, and she was recording artists locally, and very thankful for her. But the sound was always real crunchy. We had an old interface, we had different mics, and as I always point out, we're 5 feet away from my IT room at my building, so there's all sorts of interference, and it started to get better. But one of the things that I've noticed more and more lately, like for some reason, it came up a lot last week, is last Friday, like 10 great albums came out, like Idols, Deftones, Horsewhip, Sufjan Stevens, the OCs had an album that came out, like all these amazing albums. And now that I'm like meeting a lot more of your people, as it were, and kind of following them on social media, they're all talking about the mixes. Like everybody was bitching about the mix on Deftones. Like I couldn't tell you what was wrong with it, what was right with it, but are you able to, there is a question here. Are you able to listen to music as not a producer, not an engineer, or does your ear always go to, man, that drum sounds weird, or man, that,
It can take you out.
Yeah.
But probably up until 30, 32, no, I couldn't.
Yeah.
If I thought it sucked, you would know
right away,
almost instantly, and I'd be sure to let you know.
Yeah.
As you get older, you relax a little bit. You realize that your taste isn't exactly everybody's taste, even though your taste might be might be a little better.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But no, I mean, I try to let people enjoy what they enjoy, unless it's, fascist or racist.
100%. Yeah.
Like, who cares if you want to spend your entire evening listening to deep cuts off of your Foreigner records?
Yeah.
That's not what I want to do, even though I'll listen to their radio hits, because I like those songs.
Yeah.
But I'm not searching out Foreigner right now,
Now I want searching out Foreigner.
So anyways, yeah, it's, Now I can
Yeah.
a lot more than I could when I was a young buck.
Well, with age comes perspective. In the past 6 years, 7 years, I've had 2 children and I've lost both my parents. And so
Wow.
you get some perspective on
yeah.
life events. And, at some point I heard the phrase, that's not a hill I want to die on. And so I have this little voice in my head now that's like, is it really that important for you to win that argument? Like, is it really worth your energy? And, even still, like 2016 just crushed my soul from the election standpoint and fighting with people. And I was, I was struggling at what portion of my bandwidth was the election going to occupy. And I coming up to this one, I've valiantly tried to really keep it at bay. The debate the other night I had a momentary lapse.
I can't watch.
Yeah, I fell off the wagon, but I think I'm back on it now. Well, not to mention, this is a funny story. I've been in Facebook jail for the past 24 hours.
Oh, really? Who'd you piss off?
Well, what's funny is I spent the next all yesterday after the debates just mother effing the Proud Boys and all this other stuff, saying all this vile stuff about Trump people, but nothing. I shared "Where Is My Mind" from Surfer Rosa, and I forgot that the woman's boobs are out on the record cover.
God. And
Zuckerberg put me in the slammer for 24 hours.
God forbid you see a nipple, but
boobs
fascism
on
is
I know.
great.
Fascism okay, boobs no good. But
So that's when we started bringing in and great shout outs and love to Joe Diacunto and Sean
he's
O'Brien.
another one I see. Those guys I see all the time. So I got to get him in here because his name is another one that comes up constantly.
And Broken Mold, Phil and Sean, Phil Benito and Sean O'Brien were running that, and a few other people were all involved in that. But we kind of just became eventually the house studio for these bands that Broken Mold was kind of promoting.
Right.
And we cut them a deal, bring us more bands, we'll cut you better deals, So by this time, Dylan had moved on to an IT business he wanted to start.
Okay.
And our friend Troy, who had been doing hip hop production in Reason up to then, but he wanted to learn more about microphones and stuff like that. And he came on as kind of my assistant / protege. And so we kind of just, as a joke, call ourselves the tripod,
Yeah.
Dylan would, be there when he could be and Troy and I, but kind of like Tuesday nights became Broken Mold night.
Okay.
And so we did Automatic. We did both Poetry and Lotion records. We did 2 Florida Night Heat records.
Okay.
Brom Bones. So that kind of whole family of bands is interconnected quite deeply.
There's a little scene, a little pocket.
Yeah.
A little pocket in time and in Tampa.
Right. So, we produced some records. We won a best album of the year for Automatic that year. I think it was 2010.
Okay.
For their record. It was
is there one that you're most proud of producing?
They're all my children.
You're all little babies, yeah.
But there are some, especially the more recent stuff, that I've had more. Well, we'll get to it so what happened was basically that whole run came, and then
put me in a timeline somewhere. What year are we talking about?
We're talking about like 2010.
You've had a full life, dude. I mean, you've had a few lifetimes in your lifetime.
Yeah. Added the beer in and a couple more lifetimes.
Yep.
But I had decided at the time with my fiance to move to Sarasota.
Okay.
Wanted to get out of Tampa for a bit.
Where'd you move to?
Out east of town by the state park, Miami State Park.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to set up an official recording studio. We're just going to have a couple mics, a demo studio basically for me.
Right.
And my speakers, so I could listen to music really loud. We had this big 60 by 40 with 14-foot ceiling air conditioned garage.
Oh, wow.
So that was going to be her art studio and my music studio and whatever.
Are you guys still together? No. Okay.
That's why I moved back to Florida.
Okay.
Or to Tampa.
Okay.
So about, I don't know, a little while after I moved down, I just started writing again, and Swampus was born.
Okay.
And Swampus was kind of my baby. I wrote all the songs and lyrics. And we were kind of, I like to call us alt metal.
Okay.
But you might just say it's like weird grunge also.
I can dig either. Yeah.
Yeah. So that ended up being myself on the guitar and vocals, and then Pete Newfer from Toast.
So, okay.
And I also just brought you a copy of his solo stuff that I did a couple.
Does he have something new out, or has he just put something new out? I've been seeing a lot of him on social media lately.
Well, he's in the Holy Terror as well.
Okay.
And this is Palmetto Road, which is his solo project.
Okay. Named for Palmetto Road and Manatee, or?
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
All right.
He's from Utah. I don't know if he's ever been to Manatee County.
There's a Palmetto in Utah. Oh, well.
Probably at a resort.
Yeah.
But, and then Scott from Genghis Flan, who was the lead singer of Genghis Flan, guitar player. He's also just an amazing drummer, and he's the drummer for the Holy Terror. So we
now, is he the current drummer for the Holy Terror?
Yeah.
So that's who John was telling me about.
Right.
He's kind of like an all-star drummer that was like a huge get for the band. Okay, go ahead.
And so the three of us got together and kind of started workshopping these kind of heavier songs.
Right.
And it coalesced, and we invited a producer down. I didn't want to make my own record anymore. I'd been recording my own demos for.
Yeah, you can't tell if it's good or not. You know, like I've listened to this 9 zillion times. Yeah.
And also I wanted to focus on being a guitar player and being a band member more. Cause it kind of sucks when you're doing your own records.
It's like acting and directing a movie.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So we invited our friend Bob Hirschberger down from Orlando. He used to be in a band called Bob on Blonde. They're awesome. Check them out.
I will.
Amazing.
I just recently gone on a Reversal of Man kick. Did you ever listen to them?
I think I've heard a few tracks.
Yeah. There's amazing stuff, man. Central Florida.
Also, Prescribed Fire, I wanted to say.
Okay.
Is
I love it when you guys do this, because I literally say, like, I'm going to get a court reporter to transcribe these podcasts so I can make like my Christmas shopping list of all these bands that I wouldn't have known of otherwise.
So we started recording a record and then playing around, and we ended up playing a Plan B festival down in Ybor, holding a CD release at Crowbar. Tommy held me a Friday, and all this time I've been living in Tampa. I also was doing shows at Crowbar, New World, meeting everybody, and if I wasn't playing a show, I was at a show, or at least drinking at a show. And so we did a CD release show, and then might have played one more time, and it kind of got we kind of got sucked whole form into the Holy Terror,
right, by
John, because it's the same drummer, and Pete and I just switched guitar and bass.
Okay.
So we always kind
of a very different type of music, right?
Oh, we couldn't be more different, except for the tone, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Because a lot of my I have the same doom and gloom outlook that John struggles with.
This was we were talking about that. It's like we can compare notes.
Yeah, I always know, no matter how depressed I'm feeling, I can text John and he will understand where I'm at.
Yeah. So make it just a little bit worse.
Yeah. So and then we were recording the record, doing guest spots on the record, and then we had the record, and then it was like, now we have to find the rest of the band. And so we filled it in with Kenny and Melissa.
You got pretty big there at a few points, right?
I mean, we were playing.
Yeah.
I mean, we were playing.
No, I'm sorry. I meant the band got like the number of people.
Oh,
in the
7.
Band.
Yeah. I think it's still at 7.
Okay.
And then played for, started recording the second album almost immediately. In between, I had done Pete's record, and then Pete and Scott are in another band together called Rototiller.
Okay.
I did their record last October, and then I brought you a Swampus record.
Nice.
This came out in 2016. Or it might have came out in 2017.
This is the whole reason I do this show, really, just for free shit from
just to get free band merch. Hey,
I got shirts that it's a trade. You get a koozie and a shirt. So
nice. So yeah, it was completely backwards. We had all the music.
Yeah.
And now we need to find musicians. So we built it, practiced, And while we were practicing, John's like, well, we have this one from my catalog too, and bring it up. And now all of a sudden we were writing the second album as a band.
Yeah.
So the first album is kind of like John just with special guests
barfing out what he'd been storing up in his.
And the second album is kind of like the full band.
Right.
Everybody kind of, if not, I mean, because John will come and say like, hey, here's what I think the bass should be like, you know, and he'll say, hey, I'm not really liking that part. You know, let's change it around. It's definitely his band. Right. But it's complete collaborative effort as well. Yeah. And I can't remember him ever being like, don't play that, you know?
So when did you stop playing in it?
Around December last year.
Was that because of the move or?
No, it was because of what was happening before the move.
Okay.
I just needed, thought I was trying to start a business, and ended up divorced. Yeah. And, moved back so they were playing shows, and then I moved back, to Tampa like a week before shutdown. Yeah. And moved into my buddy's house. He had a spare room and basically was quarantined for like a month. And then since then, so while I was in quarantine, I mixed the WMNF live Holy Terror. Right. I did, the album was almost done, the Holy Terror 2. Yeah. Except for a couple violin parts, one guitar part, 2 trumpet parts. So Troy, who used to be my member of my tripod at Short Circuit, right, now owns his own recording studio.
Is that where it was recorded?
No, this was the whole album was actually recorded down in my place in Sarasota.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then up here, we went over to his C Lab. It's called the C Lab, his studio is, which he'd be a good person to have on the show.
Send him my way. I want to,
because he does hip hop.
I can't tell you. Well, so that's an area I want to get into. There's a DJ that Ray Roa was talking to me about, and we were texting about having come on, but that's a world I want to get into too, and kind of understand.
Yeah. Troy can give you a lowdown on it, better than I can. Sure. I mean, I've always been a huge hip hop and rap fan, but I've never tried to produce my own.
I just think the broader and stronger your vocabulary is, the more you can appreciate things, the more, right, interesting things you can put out there.
For sure. So we recorded that record, but it was kind of in, stasis. Yeah. And so I just kind of sat in my room and started mixing the record, and they went over and recorded their parts and sent them to me. And I put it together and sent it out, and they said, man, it's sounding great. A couple revisions, put it out. And John was like, I'm good with it. And
easy customer.
It was, well, no, he's actually been one of my most picky clients over the years.
Really?
Well, yeah, he's a pro. He's very precise. Yeah. And, so it was like kind of the easiest, back and forth I've ever had. And then, at the same time, I did a couple tracks for like Acho Brother. Okay. And I started kind of trying to catalog some of my stuff that I never had time to do, like right, all my sessions, and archive them by year. Yeah. But yeah, since about then, the mics haven't been out of the box.
Are you itching?
I'll go set up right now. You got to go rent a church and find a band, and I'll go to my house and I can live.
What about creating? Like,
I've been writing lyrics recently.
Well, I mean, between what's going on in the world, and no offense intended, but what's gone on with your life, they say that great art comes from great, adversity or great pain. And obviously, as a divorce attorney, I get to, experience firsthand people going through this. Right. And it's a mind fucker, It is. Even the easy ones are.
Yeah, it was amicable. I mean, we just signed the papers, no kids, dogs and cats, which is a bummer.
So it's very much a demarcation in your life. It's a chapter ending and a new chapter beginning.
I was just thinking about that on the way here, actually, for no reason, but I'm maybe 40 this year. So the first 20 years of my life was kind of like growing up back and forth between Kansas. And then I came back when I was 20. And I'm going to be 40. And so it's like this whole period.
So what's your next 20 going to look like?
Who knows, man? I guess it's going to depend a lot on what happens in November.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wonder. I talk about that a lot. I was having a conversation with one of the people that work in the building today. I said, imagine if we don't know who wins for 6 months.
Right.
I don't know that the country could survive that.
Well, I mean, we've seen that the right will shake any tree. They'll stir any nest. They will have their agitators out. They were blocking polling places in Virginia during early voting.
Yeah.
You've got these neo-Nazi khaki wearing neo-Nazis marching around.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I've been studying the white supremacist movement in America since Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Because people don't like to think about how the same people marching in our streets right now are the same people who blew up a federal building. Not the exact same people, but you could draw a straight line between them.
Well, if there's a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlapping in the middle. Yeah. And this is what I've been thinking about more recently is shame on us for not arming up. Shame on us for not training. Shame on us for not planning for the end of days because it didn't happen the way they thought it would, but they're much more prepared for it than we are, because, and so it kills me when, I'm talking to people about the Proud Boys or white, and they're like, well, what about Antifa? It's like the 5 guys who threw a fucking full water bottle at somebody. That's, it's a false equivalence. You can't compare those two things.
Yeah, my grandfather was Antifa in World War II.
Well, fucking Captain America's Antifa. Yeah. Ronald Reagan is Antifa. The
default position
everybody
should be Antifa.
Yeah. It's just you get to a point where you don't even have a shared vocabulary. We can't even agree on reality. Yeah. And if we can't agree on reality, then you can't even have a conversation.
That's true.
It's just insane. And I know this is stuff that John thinks about a lot because we talked about what goes into his songwriting and the types of things that he thinks about. Do you have kids?
No.
Yeah, that's the thing that bums me out most about it though, because, before we had kids, my wife and I, we always like, well, we're intelligent people. We can empathize with parenthood and know what all that stuff is. But boy, when you have them, it scares the shit. I was an only child. I love the fact that I have 2,
right? Because
my sincere hope, and it doesn't always play out this way, is that they'll always have each other even after we're gone. But the world is just a motherfucker. It is a dark motherfucker, and no one gets out alive.
Yep.
And that's what these marriages and, to envision going out alone or to, it's bleak stuff. And so you need to include me in your texts with Nowicki because I'll just pile on with you guys.
Yeah. I'm trying to steer away from nihilism towards more like absurdism. Just like it's so absurd.
If you can find the humor in it, life is absurd. That's my tattoo that I've got on here,
nice.
Big Camus guy.
Oh yeah, nice. Me too.
Yeah, I do kind of. The less you can expect out of life, the more fun you can have.
And
keep your bar real low,
even without bringing religion into it too much. It's just something that when I lost most of my hope, the same time I lost most of my religion,
right?
Which was pretty early for me. So. 13 maybe.
Right. Was that the divorce of your parents?
No. This was just natural reading books. Okay, it can't be both. Well, this makes way more sense.
Yeah.
Plus, you can look around and tell the earth isn't 6,000 years old.
Right.
If that were the case, we would see mountains rising year after year.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. So, but yeah, it's hope is, the denial of reality is the big thing, but that's not true. Hope is okay. It's okay to have hope, but you can't hope for a miracle.
No, and that's a dangerous thing. And that absolves people, unfortunately, of ownership over, their lives,
right.
And in the law, what I do, I have a lot of people who have a very difficult time seeing their part in it. They don't understand what part they played in their marriage ending, or they don't understand why they're going to jail, or they don't understand, how unfair it is. I often have, clients telling me how fair it is that the state wants to make them pay X for their charge. It's like, well, the attorney doesn't give a shit what you pay. The legislature wrote the law, and it's the same law for you as it is for every other person.
Right.
So these people didn't do it. This person did do it. That's why, but it's also not that cut and dry,
Yeah. And, unfortunately, I think the more lawyers we send to D.C., the more this country's going to be messed up. I mean, no offense to your profession.
You're not going to find someone who dislikes lawyers more than I do.
I just think as scientists and musicians and
if we have more art,
teachers were elected as congresspeople, then our country would be a lot better.
I couldn't agree more. I'm for it. I couldn't agree more. I wish that, they say, what's this? I'm going to fuck it up, but you can tell. You can tell what's important to a country by its architecture.
Yeah.
There's something.
They say a couple things like they say that too, like it's art and
the point that I'm making.
Yeah. I think the one I hear the most is you can judge a nation how it treats its old people and its young people, which we do horribly at as well. So it's not like we're leading the world in elder care or like child mortality or any of that.
Or how we treat our vets, or how we treat mental health, or how we treat substance abuse, or how we treat black people. I mean, that 13th documentary I talk about all the time. I don't know if you saw that.
Not yet, no.
How they basically wrote the 13th Amendment to legalize slavery, and then how they started writing all the laws to basically focus on poor black people. And so now there was no more slaves, but there was a shit ton of black inmates who were doing free work for,
And that happens to this day.
Yeah. So it's
and now corporations are getting rich off it, which I think is bullshit because in a democracy, even whatever we have here, representative, whatever, republic, whatever you technical term you want to call it. If the state wants to put you away, the state should have to pay for it.
Yeah.
No one should be making money off of the state deciding. Because tell you what.
Well, you're incentivizing it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you read these emails from private prisons to governors. If we lose 20 more beds, we have to shut this facility down. Then what will you do with these other, So, that's why they crack down on everything.
Yeah.
That's why they're holding immigrants at the border instead of deporting them.
Creating jobs.
Creating jobs. Yeah.
Look at employment. It's way up. I mean, they're all violating the Constitution and, creating, internment camps.
And the Geneva Convention.
Yeah. But more jobs.
Yeah.
That's why I always get a little upset when people cherry pick metrics to focus on. It's like, business is doing great, but the world is going to be a burning fucking cinder in 15 years because we've pulled out of every accord. No one's emissions are being checked. Everything's getting, it's like, it's going to be great for 10 years and then fall off a cliff after that. Well, another thing big tangent here, and I do this. For some reason, I started talking to Vetno about Eisenhower the other night, and I don't know how I got there. But with colleges, it makes me think of college football players and, these colleges that make all these money off these athletes, and the athletes don't get paid anything. America, part of the American dream is the haves capitalizing on the have-nots. That's kind of woven into the American story from the very beginning.
And the people who vote against all their own financial interests, either as single-issue voters, I won't bring up. We all know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Or the Second Amendment people, or I don't know if it's some kind of hope that is if I vote against my own financial interests enough times, I will become financially successful. Well, I don't know if that's part of it because I've never voted against my own financial self-interest.
Well, so hopefully this isn't incorrect, but one of the questions I've always had is why there's such a high incidence of conservatism in the Cuban areas or the Latino, and I've had this conversation a lot with family and stuff, and one of the things is Cuba, they were coming from a socialist country, so capitalism was the opposite of that. I know this sucks because this is, or that version of it sucks because I just had to, escape from it. So I'm going to go this way, which is away from that. And again, Mexican, all this Latino, you're coming from poverty, or you're coming from socialism, or you're coming from whatever this thing is. What's being sold about what this country offers seems ideal. So
Right.
I'm going to vote for that, and it's going to be that, and I'm going to become that. And, so very much what you're suggesting, I think, is if you walk like a duck and quack like a duck,
Right.
eventually you'll become a duck.
What do you think? When was the first time you think you knew the difference between that there were class levels in America?
I can tell you it was right around going from grade school to high school, right around there. There was a bit. So in the 80s, I remember all of a sudden, half of my friends' parents had boats, and then half of my friends' parents didn't have boats.
Right.
And we didn't have boats. So when I was a kid, if you had a Boston whaler, like you were Donald Trump or that was the fucking thing. And then, so I grew up in St. Pete.
Okay.
And I went to a Catholic school, and in Catholic school, it's not quite so easy to tell because everybody's in a uniform. Like you don't have the kids with the nice clothes and the shit clothes.
Right.
Everybody's got the same clothes on. But I remember I went to St. Pete High, and St. Pete High pulls from like the wealthiest part of Snell Isle, Shore Crest, that stuff. And I very quickly felt marginalized there. Luckily, my dad taught at Northeast High, and he was able to bring me over, even though I wasn't zoned from there.
Nice.
And I hit that. I found my, the even mix of metalhead, football player, nerd, whatever, and I just kind of fit in a little bit better. But I've always been kind of a hermit recluse. But yeah, that's probably the first time. And then I learned that lesson again and again and again. The next time I learned it that I can remember, I probably learned it in between then and now, but is my daughter, when we put my daughter into Jewish JCC, and we started getting active shooter and bomb threat calls. And I was so fucking livid that what was being done to the Jewish people. And I was talking to my Jewish friends, and they were just like, welcome to, welcome to the club, man. This is what it's all about.
Reality,
And I was just like, oh, and then again this year, the fact is like, oh yeah, the Washington Redskins, that's pretty shitty. Oh, Aunt Jemima, yeah, that's pretty shitty. Oh, all the Barbie dolls at Target are white. Yeah, that's pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Like all these things. So that's not really class, more as race, but it's you kind of just don't notice it until you're like, I always think of Clockwork Orange, where they're like peeling his eyeballs over. It's like, now do you see it? It's like, oh, now it's everywhere. Now I can see it everywhere. So.
Right. Yeah. I just a memory that came back to me recently was I think I was watching cartoons or something one Saturday morning, and they played the UNICEF commercial or whatever it was for the African kids.
Oh,
you can adopt an African kid for a penny a day or whatever it was back then, 2 pennies a day.
Yeah.
And I just ran, my mom just, why are they living? What's happening?
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever remember, like, oh, it's not just going to be all white people around me in my little neighborhood. Although my neighborhood was probably 50% white.
Yeah.
I live in Sogtown. A lot of Latino and other, but yeah, I mean, I went to a Episcopal day school. And so most of the people there were white Anglo-Saxon people. And so really the first time I went to public school was 6th grade at Woodrow Wilson before I went to Tampa Prep. And the difference there, it blew my mind. Like I couldn't, like that was the first time anyone ever like that I knew didn't have lunch.
Yeah.
Or their lunch account was overdrawn and the school wouldn't feed them.
Right.
Like I think around that time. So yeah, 6th grade, something like that. But yeah, I mean,
and at some point it happens. I don't think by decision, but there's the people who empathize, and then the people who kind of don't give a shit. Fuck them. It's their fault.
Yeah.
And that's what kills me. It's not the same starting line for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not the same treatment for everybody. It's not so. Well, we did well. We ended on a bummer of a note. So I think
if one thing I do continue to have hope for is that the better side will win. I don't want to say good side, but the better side will win this one. And if not, then I will have learned the final lesson I need to learn about America.
Yeah.
I learned one on 9/11. I learned one invading the Iraq War.
Yeah.
I learned one torture papers.
Yeah.
You know, and there's been several others in between.
This is probably why you're not going to fight with someone over the snare drum anymore.
Yeah, and well, I will if it's on my record.
Yeah. Not on my record. You're not going to fucking.
Yeah, but if it's on somebody else's record, I didn't do that shit. Yeah.
Well, I can right away tell that I can probably do about 5 more of these with you. So hopefully you'll let me know.
Maybe when you run out of guests,
whenever
I'll come back over.
we can talk politics, religion. I have this idea of catering and getting like a keg and setting up cameras and doing an election night, like live show, and just getting people like shit-faced or other things and having them scream at a screen for the entire time.
I'm pretty good at the first part.
Yeah. So.
And, you know, screaming at the screen comes after.
Thank you so much for coming by. You're an amazing dude. I really appreciate you coming by. I love the music that you make, the music that you produce. You're part of a family that I'm just finally kind of seeing as being out there, and it's
welcome to the family.
It's pretty cool. Well, I thank you. I don't know if that's true, but I appreciate it. So have a good night.
Thanks
so
for
much.
having me.
All right.